So, verse 14 is where we're up to. It says, when you come to the land which Jehovah your Elohim is giving you, and shall possess it and shall dwell in, and you shall say, let me set a king over me, like all of the Gentiles that are around me. You shall certainly set a king over you, whom Yehovah your Elohim chooses. And this very much fits in with the theme that comes throughout this Torah portion about people who are in authority are to be the ones whom Yehovah has chosen, because there are many who want to take authority upon themselves, and Yehovah will use all of those things for his own glory. But the ones that you want to follow are the ones whom Yehovah has chosen, and we should have discernment to know those people. Set a king over you from among your brothers. You're not allowed to set a foreigner over you who is not your brother. So somebody who is a native-born Israelite. Now we're going to see some interesting things that the king has to follow. Some Torah which is only applicable to a king. So great example of some of the Torah that Yeshua couldn't have fulfilled when he came and walked the earth. Okay, he was metaphorically a king, or he's king over his kingdom. But these commands he couldn't have fulfilled as a human man when he walked the earth. Only he is not to increase horses for himself, nor cause the people to return to Mitzrayim to increase horses. So Yeshua wasn't going about the place thinking, oh, I better not get too many horses for myself, because he wasn't a human king on the earth. For Yehovah has said to you, do not return that way again. And he is not to increase wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor is he to greatly increase silver and gold for himself. So kings could not have a load of wives. Okay, in the New Testament we have the admonition for people who are in spiritual leadership to not have more than one wife. And I've had people say to me before, what about King David? King David had more than one wife. Well, yeah, he might have been in sin, and also he wasn't in spiritual leadership over the people. He wasn't a spiritual guide or a spiritual counselor of the people. But the reason that the kings aren't to do these things are interesting, and the reasons for these laws are applicable to us, even if the laws directly are not. So he's not to increase horses for himself. He's not to increase silver and gold to himself either. 1 Kings 10:26-29 says, and Shlomo gathered chariots and horsemen, and he had 1,400 chariots, 12,000 horsemen, whom he stationed in the chariot cities and with the king in Jerusalem. And the king made silver as common as in Jerusalem as stones, and he made cedars as plenty as the sycamores, which are in the low country. Now Yehovah gave him this wealth, so that's not a transgression of the command. Okay, he didn't gain silver for himself, but he did surround himself with military might, with horsemen. Shlomo had horses brought out from Mitzrayim. That is directly in contravention of the command. So you don't have a load of horses so as to not cause the people to go back to Mitzrayim. And Ku'eh, the king's merchants brought them in Ku'eh at a price. And a chariot came up and went out from Mitzrayim for 600 pieces of silver, and a horse 150. And so by their hand they brought them out to all the kings of the Hittites and the kings of Aram. So Solomon gained this mighty army for himself. And the problem in the king doing these things, in gaining wealth for himself, not wealth that Yehovah has given to him, and horses and chariots for himself, is that dependence becomes to be on those things. It comes to be on those things rather than in Yehovah. If Yehovah wanted to destroy Solomon, it wouldn't matter how many horses and how many chariots Solomon had. All that would matter is that he was in right standing before Yehovah. Isaiah 2:6-8 says, for you have forsaken your people, the house of Yaakov, because they have been filled from the east and practiced magic like the Philistines, and they are pleased with the children of foreigners. And their land is filled with silver and gold. There's no end to their treasures. Their land is filled with horses. There's no end to their chariots. and the land is filled with idols. They bow themselves to the work of their own hands, to what their own fingers have made. And this is something that we need to be careful about, okay? That our dependence, our trust is in Yehovah's name. Okay, if our trust comes to be from means of security that we can gather around ourselves and we think, now I'm secure now that I've got all these horses and chariots, I'm secure now that I've got all this silver and gold, but I wasn't secure before, then we're not trusting in Yehovah's name. And I think people wonder sometimes, why is it that Yehovah is not doing these things which he has promised? Okay, why is it that I don't have this money or whatever it is, whatever the modern equivalent of horses and chariots and things to be secure are? They think, I go along to church, I do the commandments, surely I should be blessed. But their trust is not in Yehovah's name. Okay, those things come from trusting in his name. But if you look at the money, and that's where you get your security, your sense of security from, you're trusting in that rather than in his name. And it's trusting in his name which is the root of why you do the commandments. Just doing the commandments isn't going to profit you, I think. Doing the commandments because you trust in his name, that will profit you something. Okay, you will be looked after, provided for by Yehovah if you trust in his name. But if you're not doing the commandments because you trust in his name, you're doing it for provision or for whatever other thing, or when it comes to an aspect that you are tested in, you decide, no, I'm not going to trust in his name in that, then you haven't done the very basic first thing, which is trust in his name, from which all the other things stem. So the kings weren't to do this. They weren't to trust in silver and gold. They weren't to trust in horses and chariots or whatever things of this world. Isaiah 31, 1-3 says, "Woe to those who go down to Mitzrayim for help and rely on horses, who trust in chariots because they are many, and in horsemen because they're very strong, but who do not look to the set-apart one of Yisrael, nor seek Yehovah." Okay, it's fine to have things in the world. That's not a problem. But they need to be derived from that trusting in Yehovah's name, not I will trust in the things of the world whilst trusting in his name, because those two things are actually incompatible. If you're doing the commandments, but you're trusting in the things of the world, you're not trusting in his name. Verse 2 says, "And he also is wise and has brought evil and has not turned aside his words. And he shall rise up against the house of evildoers and against the help of workers of wickedness. And the Mitzrites are men and not ale, and their horses are flesh and not spirit. And when Yehovah stretches out his hand, both he who helps shall stumble, and he who is helped shall fall." So even in the case where you're looking to somebody, an external body, Mitzrayim, Egypt, for your help, and you're thinking, wow, in this aspect, I'm not obeying Yehovah, but I'm going to be fine because I've gathered all of this stuff around me. If that help comes from somewhere else, Yehovah is saying, in that situation, the help will fall. Those who are helping you will fall, and the one who is helped will fall. You're not going to make it any different. Okay, all you're actually doing in that situation is making it so that the one who's helping you will also be in a worse position. You can't go against the will of Yehovah and gather enough around you to be secure unless your trust is in him from the beginning. Psalm 20 verse 7 says, "Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we remember the name of Yehovah or Elohim." That's the point where everyone must begin. Following the commandments won't profit you, I think, if it's not from trusting in his name. Yehovah provides for those who trust in his name. If you don't trust in his name, you won't be one of the ones whom he will provide for. Jeremiah 17, 11-15 says, "And the word of Yehovah came to me, saying, Please say to the rebellious house, do you not know what these mean? See, the king of Bavel came to Jerusalem and took its king and heads and brought them with him to Bavel." Okay, the strong men of Yehudah, he brought them with him to Bavel. He took one of the royal seed and made a covenant with him and put him under oath, and he took away the mighty of the land, so that the kingdom would be brought low and not lift itself up, but guard his covenant that it might stand. But he rebelled against him by sending his messengers to Mitzrayim to give him horses and many people. Shall he thrive? He's gone to Mitzrayim. He's going to get all this stuff. He's got all this stuff now that he can rely on. He's got all this security around him. But what will it profit him? Is he going to thrive if Yehovah says that he is not to thrive? No, Yehovah has said that he's not to thrive. And none of that will profit him whatsoever. The only thing that will profit us is trusting in his name. And from that flows everything else. Psalm 33, 13 to 22 says, Yehovah has looked from the heavens. He has seen all the sons of men. He looked from his dwelling place on all the inhabitants of the earth. He who fashions the hearts of them all. He who understands all their works. The king is not saved by the multitude of an army. A mighty man is not delivered by great strength. You can look at those things and you can say, wow, look at that incredibly powerful army that country's got. They're going to be fine. Well, Yehovah is going to bring some kind of misfortune upon them. Misfortune's the wrong word. He's going to bring some kind of curse upon them. How will that be? Their huge army is going to save them in the day that Yehovah wishes to curse them. A mighty man's not delivered by his great strength. Okay? Look at Charlie. He's massive. Who's ever going to mess with Charlie? Okay? Yehovah wasn't with him and Yehovah decided Charlie is going to be smitten by this tiny little fella, then he would be. A horse is a vain means of safety. Neither does it rescue any by its great power. We have a tendency to look at these things in the world and we think that we need to go to them in order for things to be okay, for whatever situation we have in our lives to be worked out. But none of those provide the deliverance. See, the eye of Yehovah is on those fearing him, on those waiting for his kindness, to deliver their soul from death and to keep them alive during the scarcity of food. Okay, during famine, he will keep alive those who fear him. Not going to tell us how he's going to do it. We can't possibly imagine. You know, we can build up all the food that we want, but if Yehovah wishes for us to not have any food during that period of time, we won't have any food, and there's nothing in the world that we can possibly do to stop ourselves being in that position apart from to trust in his name. And it's not trusting in his name which leads people to go to these other sources of security. You want the security from that thing. In doing so, that is sin against Yehovah because you're not trusting in his name. Verse 20 says, our soul is longed for Yehovah, our help and our shield is he. For our heart does rejoice in him, for we have put our trust in his set apart name, in his character and who he is. That's what you trust in. That's where everything, all of your security comes from. Let your kindness, O Yehovah, be upon us, even as we wait for you. A wrong man hardens his face, but as for the straight, he establishes his way. There is no wisdom or understanding or counsel against Yehovah. It doesn't matter. You could build up for yourself the most amazing kingdom in the world, the most amazing armies with all of the modern horses and chariots, all of the tanks, whatever you want, all the missiles that you want. But nothing can come against the counsel of Yehovah, the way that he will make things to be. The horse is prepared for the day of battle, but the deliverance is of Yehovah. You can prepare all those things and be like, look, we're going to be ready. If Yehovah brings an army from the north, we're going to be ready. We've got all the horses, all of the chariots. Nothing is going to take away our security, our peace and security from us. The deliverance is of Yehovah. The curse is of Yehovah, though. Verse 18 says, it shall be when he sits on the throne of his kingdom that he shall write for himself a copy of this Torah in a book from the one before the priests, the Levites. So how did Yehovah have it? How did he institute it? How were things meant to be in the beginning when he put all these things in place? The copy of the Torah was before the priests and the Levites. The people would hear it from the Levites who were nearby to them, and they'd hear it once a year at Sukkot. Because what do you need to know? Walk righteously, love your neighbor. How do you do that? What are the instructions? You can learn those very, very simply. The king was the other person who was to have a copy of the Torah. Now, I'm not saying that people shouldn't have copies of the scriptures or that it's a terrible thing or anything that people might misunderstand me to be saying. What I'm saying is this is not how it was originally meant to be. It's meant to be easy to understand. It's meant to be easy to disseminate to somebody. The reason that the king had a copy is something that Yehovah can use the fact that now everybody is in a different position to accommodate or to achieve. It says, it shall be with him, he shall read it all the days of his life, so that he learns to fear Yehovah as Elohim, guard all the words of this Torah and these laws to do them. And people can do that now. So that his heart is not lifted up above his brothers, and so as not to turn aside from the command right or left, so that he prolongs his days in the kingdom, he and his children in the midst of Israel. This is the Torah. This is the law of Elohim. He is to understand, he's to write himself a copy, and he's to understand it so that he can rightly rule the kingdom like the priests and the Levites were to do justice according to what Yehovah had said. But as I say, the people were never meant to have their own copies of the scriptures. And I would suggest that it has actually caused massive amounts of confusion among people. Yehovah gives us his scriptures, and he gives us his body and the people in the body through which those scriptures are interpreted. That's the way that it always was. So for people online, you can hit the dislike button now. Deuteronomy 18, verse 1. Okay, the priests, the Levites, all the tribe of Levi have no part nor inheritance with Israel. They're to eat the offerings of Yehovah made by fire and his inheritance. But among his brothers, Levi has no inheritance. Yehovah is his inheritance, and he has spoken to him. Okay, so it's almost like, or it appears to me, like the Levites were to trust in Yehovah for everything, that Yehovah was their inheritance, and that was the example that they showed to the people. Verse 3 says, and this is the priest's right from the people, from those who bring an offering, whether it is bull or sheep, that they give to the priest the shoulder, the 2 cheeks, and the stomach. The first fruits of your grain, your new wine, your oil, the first of the fleece of your sheep, you give to him. And we've looked before at how we can give to the priest. Now we can give to Yeshua by giving to the least of the brethren. So if people are sheep farmers, maybe give the first fleece of your sheep to the least of the brethren. Or if you're growing produce, maybe provide for the least of the brethren in that way. For Yehovah your Elohim has chosen him out of all your tribes to stand to serve in the name of Yehovah, him and his sons forever. And again, we've got this theme going through. Yehovah has chosen him to stand and serve. Okay, and these would be the judges, the people would go to when they had matters that they needed clearing up. And when the Levite comes from one of your gates, from where he is sojourned among all Israel, and shall come with all the desire of his soul to the place which Yehovah chooses. So he comes with all of his stuff, everything that he wants. Then he shall serve in the name of Yehovah his Elohim, like all his brothers the Levites who are standing there before Yehovah. They are to have portion to eat, besides what comes from the sale of his inheritance. What? His inheritance? Levi is to have no inheritance. He will have what comes from the sale of his inheritance. It's a different word. I go into it in future, but it's a different word. It's basically patrimony from his lineage or something like that. When you come into the land which Yehovah your Elohim is giving you, do not learn to do according to the abominations of those Gentiles. Let no one be found among you who makes a son or daughter pass through the fire, or who practices divination, or a user of magic, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or one who conjures spells, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls up the dead. For whoever does these are an abomination to Yehovah. Because of these abominations, Yehovah your Elohim drives them out from before you. Now we're going to see when Yehovah gives instructions about what to do when you come to cities that are far from you, that you're to offer them terms of peace. And if they don't accept, then you do one thing. If they do accept, you do another. But I want to address this because people have in their heads the idea that Yehovah, when he sent all the Israelites to the land of Canaan, the reason that he was doing it was because they were all Nephilim, Go and wipe them out. They're all Nephilim. He tells us in numerous places throughout the scriptures why he does it, because they were wicked, because of these abominations. That's why Elohim drives them out from before you. It's interesting to me that the very next verse says, be tamim before Yehovah your Elohim. People who are of this mindset and think that Yehovah was driving out the Nephilim also believe that when it says that Noah was perfect in his generations, it meant that he had no Nephilim genetics. Well, here we're told to be the exact same word, be complete, or be tamim before Yehovah your Elohim. It's interesting to me that it follows on from the verse that says, this is the reason why I'm driving out these people from the land of Canaan. For these nations whom you are possessing do listen to those using magic and to diviners. But as for you, Yehovah your Elohim has not appointed such for you. Yehovah your Elohim shall raise up for you a prophet like me from your midst, from your brothers. Listen to him. Now, this prophet, we know that this is speaking of Yeshua. We have in John 1, we found him whom Moshe in the Torah and the prophets did right. Okay, this was speaking of Yeshua. That is an interesting thing, but an interesting thing that stuck out to me as I was reading through this is the reason why Yehovah sent Yeshua as the prophet. Why did he send Yeshua as the prophet? Prophet like me from your midst, from your brothers, listen to him, according to all that you asked of Yehovah your Elohim in Chorev. So the reason that he sent Yeshua was because of what they asked in Chorev, in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of Yehovah my Elohim, nor let me see this great fire anymore, lest I die. So it's because of them asking that he sends him. Yehovah said to me, what they have spoken is good, and that's all that we get in the account in the book of Exodus. I shall raise up for them a prophet like you out of the midst of their brothers, and I shall put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. That's the bit that we don't get in Exodus, and that's why he sent Yeshua. Among myriad other reasons why Yeshua was sent and the things he achieved, but it was as a response to what they've said when they said, we don't want to hear from the mountain, we don't want to hear your voice, we don't want to see the fire. He says, okay, what they've spoken is good, I'll send them Yeshua. John 14, 1-9 says, let not your heart be troubled. Believe in Elohim. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many staying places, or mansions. It's difficult to translate that word. And if not, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I shall come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, you might be too. And where I go, you know, and the way, you know. Thomas said to him, Master, we do not know where you're going, or how are we able to know the way? Okay. What Yeshua is coming and telling them is exactly what Yehovah on the mountain, when he came down in that manifestation, was to tell them the way to the Father. Yeshua said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. He was the Word made flesh. You want to get to the Father? You must follow the way, the truth, and the life. If you had known me, you would have known my Father too. From now on, you know him and have seen. Philip said to him, Master, show us the Father, and it is enough for us. Okay, again, remember why Yeshua was sent, or one of the reasons was because they didn't want to see him on the mountain. They didn't want to hear his voice and see the great fire. And they're saying, show us the Father, and it's enough for us. Yeshua said to him, have I been with you so long and you've not known me, Philip? He who has seen me has seen the Father. And how do you say, show us the Father? So he comes down on the mountain and they're all terrified of him. So he comes again in another form and still they don't want to hear his voice. John 15:19 says, therefore Yeshua responded and said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, the Son is able to do none at all by himself, but only that which he sees the Father doing. Because whatever he does, the Son also likewise does. You don't see the similarity, do you? You don't see the similarity between what was happening on the mountain and him telling them and instructing them in the Word, the way by which they should get to the Father. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Okay, it's the same thing. I've just come in another form. I'm telling you exactly the same thing. Deuteronomy 18:19. And it shall be the man who does not listen to my words, which he speaks in my name, I require it of him. Okay, Yeshua said, didn't he? He said, look, I didn't come to judge anyone. I came to give them the words of everlasting life. They hear me, all well and good. They don't hear me, the word that I speak, that's what's going to judge them in the last day. Paraphrasing, of course. Does not listen to my words which he speaks, I require it of him. But the prophet who presumes to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or who speaks in the name of other gods, even that prophet shall die. When you say in your heart, we've seen this in recent Torah portions, that people are going to have reactions immediately in their heart. They're going to say things in their heart. And then Yehovah says, this is the response that you're to have to the thoughts that arise in your heart. When you say in your heart, how do we know the word which Yehovah has not spoken? When the prophet speaks in the name of Yehovah and the word is not, or comes not, that is the word which Yehovah has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously. Do not be afraid of him. When Yehovah your Elohim cuts off the nations whose land Yehovah your Elohim is giving you, and you dispossess them and dwell in their cities and in their houses, separate 3 cities for yourself in the midst of the land which Yehovah your Elohim is giving you to possess. Prepare a way for yourself. Divide into 3 parts the border of your land which Yehovah your Elohim is giving you to inherit. Now, I'm not going to go into these cities of refuge. We kind of glanced at them when we looked at the issue with Avshalom. Well, I put this up on the channel recently. If anybody wants to understand what these cities of refuge were and what situations they were to deal with, I'd recommend just going and looking at this teaching. If Yehovah your Elohim enlarges your border, this is interesting to me. If he enlarges your border, you're going to go into the land. If he enlarges your border, as he swore to your fathers and has given you the land, he swore to Abraham and has given you the land which he promised to give to your fathers. Okay, because the land that was promised is not the land that they received. Okay, the land that they received was within those boundaries, but the boundaries were much larger as described. When you guard all this command to do it, which I'm commanding you today, to love Yehovah your Elohim, to walk in his ways all the days, then you shall add 3 more cities for yourself besides these 3. So in the millennial kingdom, we will not have 6 cities of refuge. We'll have 9 when he expands those borders. So the innocent blood is not shed in the midst of your land. Again, this idea of the land being defiled by blood being shed. Okay, if somebody's blood is shed by accident, something has to be done in order to accommodate that. And that's what these cities of refuge are for. But when anyone hates his neighbor and shall lie in wait for him and rise against him, shall smite the life from him so that he dies, then he shall flee to one of these cities. Then the elders of the city shall send and bring him from there and give him into the hand of the revenger of blood, and he shall die. Your eyes shall not pardon him, but you shall purge the blood of innocent blood from Israel so that it might be well with you. So in this case, when somebody's fled to a city and they have no right being there, they actually killed somebody, then you take him from there. Your eye does not pity him. You do not spare him. You kill him. You'll purge the blood of innocent blood from Israel. Verse 14 says, do not remove your neighbor's boundary, which those in the past have set in your inheritance. Okay, so they have those things when it was all drawn by lot, don't they? They have the various areas of the land drawn by lot. They're not to change the boundary. In the 50th year, it returns to the people to whom it belongs. One witness does not rise up against a man concerning any crookedness or sin that he commits. At the mouth of 2 witnesses or at the mouth of 3 witnesses, a matter is established. So if anybody ever tells you that somebody has sinned, and they are the only witness as to it, you're not to believe them. Okay? Has to be in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, which is why Matthew 18, what happens? Somebody sins. You go and speak to them between you and them alone. Okay? Then, if they don't hear you, you go with 2 or 3 so that the matter is established in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses so that it can then be believed. When a malicious witness rises up against any man to accuse him of turning aside, both men who have the dispute shall stand before Yehovah, before the priests and the judges who serve in those days. What's the last part of Matthew 18? You bring them to the assembly, to the leadership, and they will judge the matter. We had then an issue where somebody brought, if you don't mind me saying, brought a false accusation against Mel. And we had to have a meeting and sort out the situation. And it's interesting, actually. This Torah portion's had me thinking about those sort of things. But we came to a decision on it. They weren't happy. They went away in a big, they just weren't happy about it. And then they end up leaving the fellowship. But these are the instructions that we're to follow in those cases. Okay, when there is a matter of strife between plea and plea, between two people who come and they both got some kind of grievance with the other, or one person's got a grievance with the other person, you don't believe it at the mouth of one witness. Okay, at the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, a matter is established, and then whether or not it has taken place is in the hands of the leadership, and their decision is to be respected. Verse 18 says, and the judges shall diligently search and see if the witness is a false witness who has falsely accused his brother. Then you shall do to him as he thought to have done to his brother. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst. And let the rest hear and fear and never again do this evil matter in your midst. So if somebody comes against somebody else, not only do they have to be the ones that are inflicting the punishment, not only do there have to be 2 or 3 witnesses in that case, but also they have to accept, and all the witnesses have to accept, if they come to witness against somebody and the matter is not true, whatever the punishment was for that will be done to the person coming as a witness. There's all of these things built in to the idea of a death penalty and all of those sort of things that people misunderstand in Yehovah's Torah. Let your eye not pardon, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. When you go out to battle against your enemies and shall see horses and chariots and people more numerous than you, do not be afraid of them. For Yehovah your Elohim, who brought you up from the land of Mitzrayim, is with you. Now this is really interesting. Okay, I've compared this before to areas in our lives when we come up against something and we've got to overcome it, and we're like, no, I don't know how I'm going to overcome this thing. It seems like it's stronger than I am, or whatever it is. It says, it shall be when you draw near to the battle that the priest shall come and speak to the people. Shall say to them, hear, O Yisrael, Shema Yisrael, you are drawing near today to battle with your enemies. Do not let your heart faint. Do not fear or tremble or be afraid before them. For Yehovah your Elohim, he is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to save you. It's interesting, isn't it, if you think about that in the context of us coming up against things that we need to overcome in our lives. Our heart might be fearful before them, but then what is the remedy that Yehovah offers? The priest comes and says to the people, don't be afraid, and he reminds them of all the things. He reminds them that it's Yehovah your Elohim who's with you. Don't fear or tremble or be afraid or let your heart faint. The officers, the Shoftim, shall speak to the people, saying, who is the man who has built a new house and has not dedicated it? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in battle, and another man dedicate it. And who is the man who has planted the vineyard and has not begun to use it? Let him also go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle, and another man should begin to use it. And who is the man who is engaged to a woman and has not taken her? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle, and another man take her. I want to point out at this point, I'm aware that some people think that this is a reason why Yeshua has to abide with his bride for a year before he can come and smite the nations. They'll say, Yeshua has a new house. He's not dedicated it. He's planted the vineyard, us, and he's not begun to use it. He is engaged to a woman, us, the bride, and he's not taken her. But what I want to point out is that cannot be true. Okay, we don't have to abide with Yeshua for a year or anything like that, because the reason given for all of these commands is lest he dies in the battle. Lest he dies in the battle. It's not going to apply to Yeshua. Yeshua's not going to die in the battle. It's not like Yeshua has to follow this Torah commandment lest he dies in the battle. We have to understand the context to these things. Further, it says, the officers shall speak further to the people and say, who is the man who is afraid and tender of heart? Let him go and return to his house, lest the heart of his brothers fail like his heart. Is this something we're going to apply to Yeshua as well? Who is the man who is afraid and tender of heart? Oh yeah, it's Yeshua. You better go and abide with this bride. And it shall be, when the officers have finished speaking to the people, that they shall appoint commanders of the divisions to lead the people. When you draw near to a city to fight against it, then you shall make a call for peace to it. And it shall be that if it accepts your call to peace and shall open to you, then all the people found in it are to be your tributaries and subjects. But if it does not make peace with you and shall fight against you, then you shall besiege it. And Yehovah your Elohim shall give it into your hands, and you shall smite every male in it with the edge of the sword. Only the women and the little ones and the livestock and all that is in every city, all its spoil, you take as plunder for yourselves. And you eat the enemy's plunder, which Yehovah your Elohim gives you. Okay, so this is a command that is given not to the cities when they go in to the land of Canaan. Okay, this is other wars that they have. They're to offer peace first. To the people in the land of Canaan, though, it's different. Do so to all the cities which are very far from you, which are not of the cities of these nations. Only of the cities of these people which Yehovah your Elohim gives you as an inheritance, you do not keep alive any that breathe. As we've seen, not because they're all Nephilim and we need to wipe them all out. We don't need to make excuses for Yehovah. You shall certainly put them under the ban, the Hittite and the Amorite and the Canaanite and the Perizzite and the Hivite and the Jebusite, as Yehovah your Elohim has commanded you, lest they teach you to do according to all their abominations which they have done for their gods, and you sin against Yehovah your Elohim. Why did he want them destroyed? That's why. We don't need to make these excuses for him. Exodus 23:31-33 shows us what happens when people, again, Yehovah's made the judgment. Just like David said, be gentle to Absalom. What happens when you disagree with the king and you think, oh no, I've got a better way of doing this. I've got a better way of dealing with it. Yehovah said, I shall set your border from the Sea of Reeds to the Sea of Philistines, and from the wilderness to the river, for I shall give the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and you shall drive them out before you. Do not make a covenant with them, nor with their gods. Let them not dwell in your land, lest they make you sin against me when you serve their gods, when it becomes a snare to you. So it's kind of the opposite of what David's saying. David was saying, be gentle to Absalom. Disagreement with him causes the trouble that we saw. Here, Yehovah is saying, don't show pity to them. Don't make a covenant with them. Don't have them living in your land. Okay, it might seem like a good thing for you to do. Don't do it though. Joshua 9:11-15 says, so our elders and all the inhabitants of our land spoke to us saying, take food with you for the journey and go to meet them and say to them, we are your servants, and now make a covenant with us. This bread of ours we took hot for our provision from the houses on the day that we left to come to you. But now, see, it is dry and it is crumbly. And these wineskins which we filled were new, and see, they are torn. And these our garments and our sandals have become old because of the very long journey. And the men of Israel took some of their food, but they did not ask at the mouth of Yehovah. Okay, so now these people are coming to them. We've got this stuff. Okay, we made it all fresh, but now it's a bit dry and it's a bit crumbly. Men of Israel were quite happy. We'll take some of your food. But they didn't ask Yehovah about it. Yehoshua made peace with them and made a covenant with them to let them live. Okay, it probably seemed like the right thing to do, didn't it? There's all these people who come to them with food, and they're like, we've come to make a covenant with you. It probably seemed like the right thing to do, to go, oh, go on then. We were told to destroy you, but probably a bit awkward to do that when you've arrived with all of this food. We'll make a covenant. Judges 2, 1-3. And the angel of Yahovah came up from Gilgal to Bochim and said, I led you up from Mitzrayim and brought you to the land of which I swore to your fathers. And I said, I do not break my covenant with you. And as for you, do not make a covenant with the inhabitants of this land. Break down their altars, but you have not obeyed my voice. What is this that you have done? Therefore, I also said, I am not driving them out before you, and they shall be adversaries to you, and their gods shall be a snare to you. And I don't mean to mislead anyone into thinking that this is a direct response to what's happened. This is in response to another incident where they make covenants, but it's the same thing that they were doing. 2 Samuel 21, 1-6. And there was a scarcity of food in the days of David for 3 years, year after year. And David sought the face of Yehovah, and Yehovah answered, because of Shaul and his bloodthirsty house, because he killed the Gibeonites. They're the people that they were making a covenant with in Joshua. Yehovah now says there's this famine in the land because Shaul killed those Gibeonites, the ones that you were to kill originally, because Shaul killed them, because he's treated them in this way after you've made a covenant of peace with them. Now there is a famine in the land. The king therefore called the Gibeonites and spoke to them. Now the Gibeonites were not of the children of Israel, but of the remnant of the Amorites. Okay, so these people were Nephilim or giants. And the children of Israel had sworn protection to them, but Shaul had sought to kill them in his ardor or his zeal for the children of Israel and Yehudah. So David said to the Gibeonites, what should I do to you? And with what do I make atonement so that you bless the inheritance of Yehovah? So Yehovah's problem is that the children of Israel had sworn protection to them. Okay, they'd made the covenant of peace with them, and then Shaul would come along and he destroyed them. They were supposed to be destroyed in the first place, but now things are different. And the Gibeonites said to him, it is no matter of silver or gold between us and Shaul or his house. Neither is it for us to put to death any man in Israel. And he said, whatever you say, I do you. And they said to the king, the man who consumed us and plotted against us, that we should be destroyed from remaining in all the border of Israel. Let 7 men of his sons be given to us, and we shall hang them before Yehovah in Gibeah of Shaul, whom Yehovah chose. And the king said, I give them. So in order for this to be put right, this is how these people ended up being a snare to them. In the end, Israel ends up being cursed because they let them dwell there with the covenant of peace, and then they tried to destroy them afterwards, which was wrong in Yehovah's eyes. Verse 19 says, when you besiege a city for a long time by fighting against it to take it, you do not destroy its trees by wielding an axe against them. If you do eat of them, do not cut them down. For is the tree of the field a man to be besieged by you? Only the trees which you know are not trees for food, you do destroy and cut down to build siege works against the city that is fighting against you until it falls. So I can't explain this, but I know that when they go into the land, Yehovah wants them to treat the fruit of the tree in a certain way for 3 years as if it's unclean to them. And then in the 4th year, it's to be holy to Yehovah. Here he says, if it's a tree that yields food, then you're not to cut it down. Are you going to treat it like a man who is besieged by you? He says only the ones that are not used for food. They're the only trees of the land which you can cut down to make these siege works. When anyone is found slain, lying in the field in the land which Yehovah your Elohim is giving you to possess, and it is not known who smote him. Okay, so if man sheds man's blood, by man his blood is shed. That's the rule. But if in this case you don't know who shed the blood, then your elders and your judges go out, and they shall measure the distance from the slain man to the cities round about. And it shall be that the elders of the city nearest to the slain man shall take a heifer which has not been worked and is not pulled with the yoke. So will you find out which city is responsible for it? Because someone's got to be responsible for this. You find the heifer. Now this is an interesting one. It says, this heifer has not pulled the yoke. We saw when we looked at the red heifer that a heifer can be seen to have not pulled the yoke, but can also be one from which you've gotten milk. In this case, it says a heifer which has not been worked and which is not pulled with the yoke. The elders of that city shall bring the heifer down to a wadi with flowing water, which is neither plowed nor sown, and they shall break the heifer's neck there in the wadi. And the priests and the sons of Levi shall come near, for Yehovah your Elohim has chosen them to serve him and to bless in the name of Yehovah. And by their mouth every strike and every stroke is tried. Again, fallible men, not a bunch of infallible men. Let all the elders of that city nearest to the slain man wash their hands over the heifer whose neck was broken in the wadi. And they shall answer and say, our hands have not sinned, I have not shed this blood, nor have our eyes seen it. O Yehovah, forgive your people Yisrael, whom you have redeemed. Do not allow innocent blood in the midst of your people Yisrael, and the blood guilt shall be pardoned to them. Thus you shall purge the guilt of innocent blood from your midst when you do what is right in the eyes of Yehovah. And I find it very interesting to know whether or not they actually did any of this stuff, or whether or not life just continued in Israel and they were like, oh, what, don't we have to do something with a heifer if we find someone dead? Yeah, don't worry about it. It's just weird, isn't it? We don't do any of that stuff anymore. I wonder whether or not that was the reaction of the people. Shall we pray? Father, teach us to respect authority. Teach us what it is to follow things that don't make sense to us because you've said them. I pray, Father, that we'd all be humble enough to read your word and to take it at face value, and whether we understand the things that you're asking or not, we would do them out of obedience. I pray for anybody who's listening to this who finds it difficult, who has issues of pride in their heart, or anything that is within them that is displeasing to you, anything that's in any of us that is displeasing to you. I pray, Father, that you would help us to work it out and to remove it from our characters so that we could be like you. We wish to be conformed to the image of your Son. And thank you for sending Yeshua. Just pray, Father, that we would hear what it is that he's been saying, what it is that you've been saying from the beginning. Thank you for showing us the way, the truth, and the life, and the way to be where it is that you are. I pray that we would walk worthy of that calling. Thank you, Father. Amen. If anyone, well, I presume that people are going to want to, but I've brought some wine and some matzos, so we can do bread and the wine at the end. So I'll go and put all the wine out and the grape juice and all of that sort of stuff, and we'll do it now.